Why do millions defend Raila Odinga even when he might be wrong? In Kenyan politics, few names star as much emotion as Raila Odinga. For decades, he has stood at the forefront of political battles, detained without trial.
Kuna wengine ambaye wamekufa.
Fighting for multi-party democracy and challenging entrenched power. To many, he is more than a politician. He is an idea, a symbol. But what explains the excessive love, loyalty, and sometimes blind defense of Raila, even when evidence suggests he may be wrong? Psychologists and political scientists have studied this kind of devotion. To understand it, we must go beyond speeches, beyond elections, and into the psychology of leadership, identity, and belief. In psychology, there is something called identity fusion. This is when personal identity merges with the group's identity so deeply that the leader becomes part of the self. For many of Raila's supporters, backing him is not a political choice. It is who they are. Criticizing Raila feels like criticizing them personally. When he is attacked, they feel attacked. When he wins, they feel victorious. When he loses, the pain is personal. Personally, I've been a Raila follower, and I love him. At some point, I heard Kotu Secretary General Atwoli saying that Raila's followers are suicidal. Let me just take you down memory lane. Many of us grew up idolizing Raila. But why has this been happening this way? It has been cultish support. Yes, and from my understanding now, my identity became the identity of Raila. When Raila loses, I feel the loss. When Raila wins, I feel I've won. Let me just give you a brief story. When Raila lost in 2022, I traveled to Busia, and this border rider that was carrying me around literally shed tears for Raila's loss. He sought to know about my view on Uhuru failing to give Raila power. I tried to rationalize. I participated in a presidential tallying at one of the major media houses in the country. Voter turnout in some polling stations, especially one in Kisumu, with about 400 voters, had less than 100 people that showed up to vote. So meaning Raila's loss was because of you not showing up to vote for him in large numbers. However, his cry and sorrow for Raila's loss left me thinking, and here now I discover it is because his identity is the identity of Raila. So next time when you see these people loving Raila that much, remember this, it is because they share the same identity with Raila. Like what happened here is an identity fusion, and this well explained in psychology.
Baba akisema left ni? Baba akisema right ni?
Identity fusion is further explained in personality cult. Over time, Raila's story has grown beyond politics. His face on a campaign poster is more than an electoral image. It's a cultural symbol. Loyalty is rooted not just in promises, but in decades of shared struggle.
Silimu Kenya, mimi nakufa, lakini mimi nakufa kwa niaba ya Wakenya.
Because people share the same identity with Raila, they become loyal to him. So, in some way, that loyalty becomes excessive. And Raila, in this case, is seen as a demigod. I believe you get what I mean, like a demigod. He's part of us. So we must always be loyal to him. So when he says, let's turn left, we turn left. When he says it is a handshake, we follow that. When he says, let's support Ruto, it should be that. That's why you've heard leaders like Joho, Junet, and many others say that they don't question Raila. Instead, they just follow what he says, because they believe whatever Raila says is final and is the right thing, because he is the leader. When it comes to this identity fusion, Raila is the leader. So when our leader tells us, let's turn left, what do we do as followers? We turn left. When he says, let's do handshake, we do handshake. So that is why Raila enjoys that kind of support, an identity fusion and a personality cult coming together. It creates something called epistemic closure, where a closed information loop is built. In this case, when there's propaganda or any criticism of Raila, what happens is that is dismissed. Because we live in a bubble where what Raila says is the right thing. Anything outside that, that is propaganda and it is dismissed. Anything that sort of criticizes Raila, we dismiss. Because we live in a closed information loop where what Raila says is what is right. Anything outside that must be dismissed because it is wrong and it opposes or damages, this kind of person who is sort of like a demigod. So understand this, that epistemic closure implies that we live in a bubble where anything that is against or that paints Raila in a wrong way, we dismiss it and believe that it is wrong. That's why whatever he says, we believe that is right. Anything that is outside that, we have to oppose and even fight back in defense of this figure. Over time, a sealed echo chambers forms, where in this case, what happens finally is Raila is always right and opponents are always wrong. Further, in psychology, there's also something called cultic logic. Now, in cultic logic, we use it to rationalize why we support certain ideas or decisions that Raila makes. In this case, every decision Raila makes, we can reframe it as part of a grand plan, even when it contradicts his past positions. To followers, such reversals are not weakness, but strategy. Like right now, we have Raila and Ruto working together. Do we feel that he's contradicting what he stood for? No, because we think that is a strategy that eventually will help us cross the Rubicon. Also, there's an issue of emotional manipulation. Campaigns often present him not just as a candidate, but as the only hope. Yeah, that is it. We feel that we share the same identity and Raila fights for us. So emotionally, we are tied to him. So in this case, every time Raila runs, we get inspired because we feel that he will be fighting for us. And in most cases, the message is not, okay, vote Raila because of policy X. Yes, we don't vote for Raila because of policy X, but we feel that without Raila, we don't have a future. In such an environment, defending Raila becomes a moral duty. Admitting he is wrong can feel like betraying the cause, the community, and oneself. Critics often face shame, ridicule, or are branded traitors. Like right now, we have Sifuna. He's a traitor. This is why some would follow him off a cliff, not out of logic, but because of belonging, history, and identity. And make no mistake, Raila gives his supporters something real, a sense of belonging in a political world that often feels cold. It validates his followers' place in the national story. But belonging has a cost. When loyalty replaces accountability and love overshadows truth, a movement risks losing sight of its original ideals. This is not unique to Kenya. Around the world, leaders rise to symbolic status, making criticism feel impossible. Yet democracy thrives not on blind devotion, but on critical engagement. Raila's place in history is secure. The question is, will his legacy be one of unquestioned loyalty or of a movement strong enough to speak truth to power? Because in the end, democracy is not measured by how loudly we cheer for our heroes, but by how bravely we hold them to the standards they themselves once fought for. You now understand what identity, fusion, epistemic closure, emotional manipulation, cultic logic, personality cult do. That is why sometimes you would wonder, why do these people love Raila so much? Understand, it's because of what I've just highlighted. This is just another day with Owen Analyst.